I'm Dr. Patty Ferris. I'm a board-certified dermatologist, and I'm your host for this episode of Skincare Confidential. This podcast was started by myself and Dr. Ted Lane to give our listeners a 360 view of the skincare industry. It's also an outreach for our medical meeting called the Science of Skincare Summit, which will be held this year in Austin, Texas, September 21st through the 23rd. Our meeting is for healthcare professionals only, so sorry if you're not a healthcare professional, but we're going to be giving out some great information about ingredients and formulations and how to use topical skincare products for clinical practice. Now, today I am so excited to have a very old friend of mine, but also really a legend in the skincare business, Mary Fisher, with us. For those of you who don't know Mary, she's the chair and CEO of Colorescience. She was also the CEO of SkinMedica from 2008 to 2012 and facilitated the sale of that company to Allergan Therapeutics. But Mary was not done kicking you-know-what in the skincare industry at that point, and she decided she was going to start another brand. And she got funding for and started the brand Colorescience, which is a huge, huge brand and also a big-time dermatology favorite. Mary also has 30 years of experience in pharmaceuticals and biotech, and she's held leadership roles in many companies and serves on the board of companies such as Sientra and Dermata Therapeutics. Mary was honored to be the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year for San Diego and more recently received the Ernst & Young Venture Capital Award of Excellence. So congratulations on that. She was also recently named as a finalist for the Most Admired CEO by the San Diego Business Journal. That is no surprise to me because everyone who works for her has been with her for years. It's a cult, the Mary Fisher cult, and I'm in it. So Mary, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us for Skincare Confidential.
Thank you, Dr. Ferris. I'm honored to be with you again and honored to be invited to participate in the podcast.
So excited. So listen, I want you to start with talking about you. I want to hear about your career journey. How did you end up going from pharma biotech into skincare? And tell me all the steps in between.
Thank you. After years in pharmaceuticals and biotech, I worked in therapeutic areas such as oncology, immunology, and a lot of years in central nervous system diseases, and didn't really appreciate the role of the skin other than being the largest organ in the body. And I was approached by an investor in SkinMedica to take a look at the CEO search that Rex Bright was running at the time. Rex was one of the co-founders. Love Rex Bright. Miss him very much. Yeah. And a wonderful friend and mentor. So he brought me in. He was getting ready to retire, and he brought me in to take the role as CEO. I was a first-time CEO, and learning about dermatology, really. And of course, he was a veteran dermatologist. I think the first non-dermatologist to be invited to a lifetime membership with the American Academy of Dermatology.
Yes, he was.
So, who better to introduce me to the space?
Yes.
I kept running into Seth Orlow's name. And, he's the chair at NYU. Yeah. And I knew Seth from one of the CNS companies, Accorda Therapeutics. And so I called him finally and said, it was, the first month on the job, and said, Seth, are you my Seth Orlow? he said, yes, Mary, I know everybody you've met with in dermatology. It's a small space. I'm glad you're here. And I started to learn about skin biology. And Dr. Ferris, I was just hooked, understanding how the skin really is this constant conversation between your insides and your outsides, and thinking much more deeply, literally, than formulation, which is so important. But learning about skin biology. And then I want to be in skin forever for the rest of my career. And we had a medical dermatology side and an aesthetics dermatology side. And so learning about the non-prescription side of the business from inside the company and from experts like yourself, Dr. Ruth Tedaldi, really examining not just the product offerings and the reasons for product offerings, the reasons for topicals, but also the business models to be able to make obvious that these are scientifically backed, clinically proven topicals and that they have specific use cases. And so thank you for leading us there. And we were approached by Bayer to acquire the medical assets of SkinMedica, and that was an offer our board couldn't refuse.
Right.
And there were some regulatory changes that pressured that business, but that allowed us to focus on the cosmetic side, and that focus developed a growth and liftoff that people weren't expecting. So all of a
It was
sudden,
unbelievable the way they
we
grew
were
the
on everybody's
brand.
radar screen. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so then the brand sold to Allergan. And did you exit SkinMedica at that time?
I did. Yes. We had acquired Colorescience 1 year prior. So
Ah,
SkinMedica technically acquired Colorescience. And it
ah,
was a very consumer facing brand, thought of primarily as mineral makeup. But over that year, we began to appreciate what we really had in Colorescience, that it was a skincare company in its own right with very robust formulas. And so Allergan gave us the opportunity to spin off. So Teddy Bell, Steve Loomis,
yes.
Heather Goodchild, we came over to Colorescience, and we've worked to transform the brand ever since that time.
So tell me, what was your vision? What have you done since you've taken over the brand? I mean, again, it's another brand that's really just blown up over the years. I think if I say color science to a dermatologist, they're going to say it's unforgettable, because that was
Yes,
really, I think, the product that got a lot of us hooked. So tell
including
us.
me.
Yeah, every one of us carrying that stuff in our purses,
It's so fun to go to, say, the Women's Dermatological Society luncheon, and we all group together and take our brushes out, and it's
so true.
ubiquitous. So
That it
um,
is.
yeah, so we were really one of very few product dosage forms in sunscreen that were powder, and we were known as the brush people. But it was the dermatologist interest in the brand that really got us hooked from the beginning. And we saw, like I said, those skin health benefits, and took our skincare experience from SkinMedica and were able to really look at developing Colorescience into a broader skin health brand. It's
So
easy
what
to
did you
start,
do? Yeah, go ahead.
please. It's
No, I was
easy
going
to
to say, what
start.
other things did you develop to sort of move it forward from just being that sort of one product brand, if you
Yes.
might say?
Yes, from one hero product, I think a big strategic decision was to broaden our offering to include specific products for specific concerns, much like a skincare company would. And
Hmm.
so our first was All Calm. These are multifunctional products, Even Up also. And then we have a very potent peptide product that the users love, and the clinical proof behind it is outstanding, and that's for signs of aging. But these are multifunctional products that do usually the sun care at a high level, and then the skincare designed for the condition, and then a little bit of color for correction. So you get immediate benefit, and then you get the long term effects.
I
And
know you
then,
all did
sorry.
sort of an interesting study pairing, I think it was Unforgettable with, maybe it was IPL, and the satisfaction of the patients by just using the sunscreen was unbelievable. I just remember thinking, this is so simple, but so important for clinicians to understand that it really changed the patient experience.
Thank you for noting that, because that was part of the design of that trial. I think some of the clinics didn't know the extent to which consumers were uncomfortable and self-conscious, and a little bit, stunned after
Right.
getting a
Yeah.
procedure like an IPL, as you know,
Yeah.
and leaving, most importantly, with sun protection that was healthy for their skin in that condition, but also some correction, if you will, color correction. A lot of consumers now are happier with the practices. They're happier with the treatments. We find rebookings are up at the practice level. So yes, of course, the patient benefit, that's absolute table stakes, right? We have to make sure we're doing good for the patient, but to do good for the practices, it also makes us very happy.
Yes, and I think that's another place that you really pioneered, especially in the early days, as you mentioned, those business models that work in clinical practice, and that is so important. I think an important contribution the company has made to our specialty.
Thank you. And you yourself, of course, such a pioneer in that space.
Well, my partner in crime, Dr. Tadaldi. I mean,
Yeah,
we got to get her on this podcast. She's on
you
my list. She's
do.
on my hit
Yes.
list. Oh, I'm going to have her. Don't worry. I'm going to have her. I'm going to be ready for her too when I get her on here. But, she's just a phenomenal,
Oh,
purveyor of skincare products, knowledge of, how important it is. And I think a lot of it is, and I tell a lot of people when I'm on the podium, if you don't believe it's important, then, you have to understand how important skincare is. And that's why I mentioned that study. And there's a whole growing body of knowledge now of what we're now calling integrated skincare, not
yes.
integrative, but integrated, meaning integrated into clinical practice with cosmetic procedures. We're seeing it with microneedling RF. We're seeing it with
Yes.
lasers. We're seeing it with IPL. And every study time and time again shows you enhanced wound healing. They show, better patient satisfaction, all of the, less redness, less downtime, all of the things that patients want. And so I think it's really important for the dermatologists listening or estheticians and skincare providers to understand how important skincare is to clinical patients.
I really think your trailblazing is a huge part of that platform. And I'm glad to hear you say that. I'm hearing it at conferences now. I was invited by Philippe Chazon to moderate a
Oh,
panel at the Aesthetics Innovation Summit, and that's attached to the Plastic Surgery Conference, as you know.
right.
So heavy plastic surgery clinical orientation for that group. And my topic was skin health, but they asked us to really mandate a broader vision of skin health in the context of plastic surgery treatments. And so the panel did a beautiful job of defining skin health for a broad population, for putting the fundamentals together on what happens before cosmetic surgery, what happens after cosmetic surgery, and how critical
Interesting.
understanding that health of the skin is to successful outcomes. I was really delighted to see the conference bring that forward.
I was going to say, go plastic surgeons. That sounds amazing. I wish I had been there.
It
But
was good,
we do the same, talking about pre-procedure and
of course.
and then the post-procedure regimens, not always the same. Um, so that's great. That's really innovative. I have to switch gears for just a second, and I wish I had it in my hand, but I've got it in my purse. Talk to me about that no-show sunscreen. OMG. I'm not kidding you. I don't know if you know, but I called the office. I said, would you send me two? I'm like begging for two of them because I want to use them, but I also want to put them on social media. I mean,
Thank
this is
you.
a mineral sunscreen that is phenomenal. And so talk to us a little bit about it and how did you all come up with that formula?
Thank you so much. I think the first personal care innovation using zinc oxide was in the 1940s. And since then, I think Colorescience is a leader in minerals because we stayed the
Yes.
course when others went to chemical actives to try to solve for, elegance and usage. And so I'm very happy and delighted that Colorescience stayed the course making skin colored zinc. And when we came into transforming the brand, it was to expand the number of skin tones we could help with that type of a solution. And so inclusivity was part of the brand transformation, more dosage forms. But always, better than I
Yeah.
do, the holy grail of using zinc as a mineral active is that it's opaque white powder. And even
Right.
getting darker tinted sunscreens, it kind of shoves the zinc out of the way proportionately in the formula, and so the SPF comes down.
Right.
And so
Ah,
these are big, big challenges. But the color science team decided to go for it with clear zinc. And I have to say, I was the internal skeptic on the team. I said, can't be done. Happy to hear about it from time to time. I just want to manage your expectations. And after three,
uh-oh.
I
They
know
proved you wrong.
they did.
I love that. I love that. That's
Yes,
great.
yes. The color science team will not be told that they can't do something. They really are invincible,
And I'm
and
sure they don't say I told you so.
they do. I welcome it. It's fine.
Of course.
They deserve it. Our technology partner had a new patented coating for zinc oxide, and not only that, but particle size, particle distribution. I'm not a particle physicist, so not the best person to speak to it, but it had to do with changing the way light is scattered on the skin when this product is applied. And each year for 3 years, different formulations would come through. And I like to point out technological, platforms are exciting, but the magic is marrying them up with a formulation that delivers the final result and that consumers want to use every day. And so that's what the Colorescience team really brought to the party. And I just couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the final product. So after decades, once and finally, a zinc product that dries down clear. It behaves like a lightweight moisturizer. We get feedback from all skin tones and colors and types, and people say it just feels so lightweight and hydrating going on the skin, and then you don't see it. So this now brings in, how men felt about using the
Oh,
brand.
they hate all sunscreens, but they particularly hate mineral sunscreens.
Yes. And so this allows us now to literally reach the whole family. The men and the kids love it too.
Yes, I used it on my grandkids this weekend. I mean, it's
Good.
phenomenal. And I was showing my daughter, I'm like, look at this stuff. And she's like, wow. We had a big time on the beach with that. I could have sold a lot of units if I had had some, I can assure you. I'm out there slathering it on. I mean, it's wonderful. I got to tease Ruth because, Ruth goes out literally with a hazmat suit. I'm going to tell her.
It's one of my favorite photos.
Me too. I use it in all my lectures because it's so funny. I mean, she literally has got her head covered, her face covered, but now I'm going to tell her to put this no-show sunscreen on and ditch all that garb she's been wearing all these years. She could go on a bathing suit. I mean, it's phenomenal. Give me a little bit of a window into sort of what you envision as the future. We talk a lot now about individualized or personalized skincare. That's something consumers are really looking into. And, there's just so many things that are coming at us. More from a technology standpoint, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, how we're using things like that to pair patients with products and things like that.
I think dermatologists are the best people to pair individuals with products, honestly, and customizing regimens. But I think when you look at our innovation pipeline, it's very full out into the future. So we can obviously handle 1 to 3 product launches per year. We've been innovating since we started transforming the brand. Now we need to fill into some categories that we haven't carried in the past, and we'll do that by the end of this year, certainly the turn into the next year. And I think what we'll be looking for are how the minerals can be applied therapeutically in other areas, not just on the face or on the body, but that skin cancer happens in the scalp.
Oh, yes.
We look at the same aging issues that everybody else does, lashes, brows, hairlines. And so I think we're heading in those directions as well. Probably a powerful focus on minerals will be a driver for us for the foreseeable future. And then we talked about business models. I think at Colorescience, we've really cracked that code that you and I and Dr. Tedaldi worked on so closely, which is what happens outside the walls of the practice and the hours of operation of the practice. What happens when our consumer is not directly in your company hearing your recommendation, and can we close some of those gaps? So education has come back on our priority. We have connector programs like practice pages, which are common. I don't think those are rare, but we've designed a loyalty program that really connects the consumer to you and fills out those hours that we're talking about. So we see nights, weekends, holidays, we're able to keep that consumer focused on the educational material behind the product selection and keep them on the product so their skin is truly protected, not just from UVA, UVB, blue light, also infrared. And we've developed a capability in protecting from pollution that I think is well studied, and I think we have some proof beyond SPF to bring to the party.
Oh, that's going to be interesting because pollutants are play a not as big a role as UV. I think we all know that, but they certainly play a role in skin aging. And so that has become top of mind with dermatologists. Any
Wonderful.
thoughts about anything in the nutraceutical area? I thought it was so
Yes,
interesting to see major companies like Neutrogena, for example, this year launching a line of nutraceuticals, and it's a personalized nutraceutical. It's a very cool play on their part. I think
I
very
think so
forward
too.
thinking.
I think so too. And we've seen some other up and coming brands, like Lima
Yes.
Laser, for example. Has a very inside and out type of approach in a take home laser, but also a professional setting laser handheld.
Interesting.
I've tested their nutraceuticals. I think very impressed. And we do think about that as a category for ourselves. We we think of zinc as a base, right? That's our
It's
core
your bread and
competency.
butter. Hmm.
Yes, yeah. But I think that when we look at it, we would need to make sure we're marrying the internal ingredients and why they're there and what they're doing to the ingredients in our topical products. And I think that's a little bit ahead of us, but absolutely on our radar screen.
When you look at consumer reports and things like that, so that is one of the things that consumers actually said they wanted more of from cosmetic companies was nutraceuticals. And
Yes,
that really surprised me. And they also said they wanted more studies. So I think
yes,
companies like Colorescience, which does a lot of studies,
yes.
maybe sometimes the consumers don't exactly get access to it or know how to access it. I'm sure you have them on your website and the like, but I think that's a place where we as dermatologists could also facilitate them understanding that no, we're not giving you things that aren't studied. I always say medical grade skincare is skincare that's meant to be put in the hands of the doctors to be used as adjunct therapy to procedures and prescriptions, and it also has to be tested because face it, doctors aren't going to use it if it's not tested. And again, Colorescience was one of the first companies really coming, I think, forward with that. And SkinMedica, which, you
It's,
all did a lot of good work. And it's amazing how that product has evolved. We actually had Raul on, and if you heard, you got to hear his podcast. I know you adore him like I do.
I adore him.
We
Yes,
worship him because he's so bright. But I
yes,
mean, to listen to him talk about the evolution of what they thought that product was when they first started with it to what it is now. And again, you're only as good as your technology at the time. So
right.
they said, I remember them telling us there's 7 growth factors in here. There's 7 growth factors in here. Now we know there's like 300 compounds, exosomes, bazillions of things. But
Yes,
again, it's so interesting because we have such technology now that we can really figure out some of these things that we just didn't have technology to understand.
I agree. That's a perfect example as
Yeah.
well. I'm thrilled that you interviewed Rahul. I have to look up his episode.
Oh, yeah, you have to. Ted got to interview him. I was very jealous because I
And I
love him.
first love him.
Yeah, we're like groupies for him because he's just that smart of a guy. And so many of the formulators are. We have to get you to the Science of Skincare Summit. We would love to
Yes.
have Color Science attend.
Oh,
And one of the things we do that I think is very unique is that we get the formulators and the research scientists on panels on the podium, and we
oh,
shoot them questions just like this, and it's really so wonderful to watch them interact with each other and talk about their products and how they formulate them. I mean, this is things that healthcare providers don't really know. I mean, I don't know it. I know it now from learning it through people I've worked with over the years, but you don't
right.
ever understand that. So it's really a unique experience, I think, for the healthcare providers to see that side of it.
Yeah, I think Trish Boland, our head of R&D, is just wonderful, not just for knowing all of the ingredients that are out there, but the combinations that are either additive or synergistic. And of course, she is absolutely expert at making a final formulation. Getting one past her is
I
difficult.
know.
She's like, I
Yes,
like to say she's like the fragrance companies that have that person called the nose, that the fragrance
exactly.
is perfect when that person says so. That's Trish.
I
So,
know. Yeah.
yes,
What do we call that person in the skincare industry? Are they the feel? Are they what is, we got to think that. We
we
got to
need
think
to
that
think that,
one through
yes,
because
yes.
everybody knows what the nose means. But you're right. These formulators, their bar is set very high.
Yes,
They will pick up on things that we won't pick up on. And understanding how to combine ingredients is essential. So you're
it is.
doing also in your line sort of problem solution products, like looking at hyperpigmentation,
Of
looking at
course.
various conditions. So that's another thing that I think the medical grade skincare lines do. I don't want to say better than, but they do really well.
Really well. And I think this is an area where we've taken a lot of extra effort to partner with our dermatologist partners. And so our physician partners work with us from think tank to need assessment to hypothesis generation, clinical trial design, all the way through to results and then publication. And then we market them because they become leaders in evaluating these kinds of new directions that we can go in. And so, we have our science behind the science of color science. And we bring our investigators directly to the world on LinkedIn, and you can come on and ask any question you have. And it highlights that they really are on the front of innovation in the space.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. Well, listen, I'm not going to keep you too terribly long because you and I could talk for hours. I told you I was stalking you at the AAD. I knew you were there. I was like, where is she? I didn't find you, but I'm not going to miss you again. I can assure you. We have to catch up. I could have
sworn I saw you at the Skin Cancer Foundation Gala.
I was there.
You were
I was absolutely there. I didn't see you.
No, you were swamped. You had a lot of
we had so much fun. It was a lovely party, and they raised a lot of money. And again, Colorescience has done a lot to protect a lot of patients from ultraviolet rays, and as you mentioned, the longer wavelengths of light. And that's again, kudos to the brand for picking up the ball on that one and really running with it. And don't anybody miss the no-show sunscreen. It's really
Thank
awesome. You think I'm selling it out of my house, but I'm not.
That's right.
I'm not. I just loved it that much. I think it's an incredible. For those of you who listened today, I know that you've enjoyed hearing Mary. She is, as I said, a legend in the business. She's not going to stop yet. I'm 100% sure she's got more tricks up her sleeve. I can tell she's given me a few little crumbs, but she hasn't given me a piece of bread yet. So we'll have you back again, Mary, and thank you so very much. And if you enjoyed what you heard here, we hope that you will like and also subscribe to Skincare Confidential. So until next time, thank you again, Mary.
Thank you, Dr. Ferris. Great show.